Hey there fellow creators, Ben here from Cinder Studios, and welcome to part 1 of my Space Objects tutorial series. In this video we're going to be talking about stars and space nebula. Now, interesting thing with this video is that this is the only one that I've technically already have 2 different tutorials on already on the channel. I have a how to paint stars video, came out I think like 4 or 5 years ago, if not even later. Or earlier rather, and I have a it's dry brushing part 2 where I paint a nebula there. So this particular tutorial will be a little bit shorter than the others because I've already covered those things on this channel, and for the most part a lot of this is going to be a quick review. That said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to get things started, we're actually not going to be going straight into doing the stars or the nebula. With any kind of good painting, it's important to lay down some kind of a base color first. And you think, oh, isn't the black gesso the base color? It is. Kind of. It's going to act as a sort of its own base layer in many ways, and it's very useful to have the black as a base, but we are going to be painting our night sky first. So for this, I'm going to slide this over to the side here, get my standard good old-fashioned glass palette out for this. And for this, I like to mix a relatively dark color, and a lot of people will say that you should never use black paint in your paintings. But I think if you're going to be using, or going to be painting any kind of object in space, you're going to need some black. So my particular recommendation for a black is some Mars black. I really like it because it is specifically a lot more matte than a lot of other blacks available. And I find that especially for a space piece, you're going to need a little less glare, especially as you work. Now, because black is a very potent color, you definitely don't need a lot of it. I'm just going to go ahead and grab a wee little bit of it, a little bit more. I've got my other substrates to paint with this as well. Now I don't just use black, because obviously black gesso support, black paint, that's a little bit redundant. So I love mixing in a little bit of a blue. I'm using some Liquitex Prussian blue hue here. And sometimes I'll actually even make it more of a purple color. So I'm actually going to grab a little bit of Cad Red Medium and mix those into my black. Now the black is still going to be the most dominant color here, but this will offset it just a little bit. Actually, I think I need a little bit more blue in there. Just a little. This offset that you're going to be achieving by mixing some other colors with your black will create a much richer, deeper, darker color. Seems weird, how do you be darker than black, but for the overall feel of a piece, this is actually really a great thing to do. From here, go ahead and grab yourself a flat brush, give it a nice little bit of a wetting in your bucket of water, and use it just to kind of keep the paint a little bit thinner and more flowy. You don't necessarily need to thin it way out, just enough to keep the paint moving. Now, for all of my pieces, I paint the edges, so I'm going to go ahead and grab them. And you don't necessarily have to worry about really covering this. It's just sort of a general base coat. Then, real quick, grab paint. Don't be afraid to dip back into your water periodically. Keep that paint flowing. It's okay if it's a little more transparent because, again, we're working on this black canvas, so any imperfections won't really show up the same way they would on a white canvas. You don't have to be neat about this. Just lay it on, get it on your canvas, and get that color on there and moving around. That's all you really need to do. Now, up to you here. You can leave it a little bit messier. I will often either go just, horizontal, vertical with it, and then real lightly. And it's actually already starting to dry a little bit, which is good because that's what we want. And as it dries, you'll be able to see where some of those high points and low points are, where you're actually missing some paint. But I'm going to do another one that way. like so. And it doesn't add much. Again, we're just kind of tinting it with that color a little bit, toning a little bit differently than it would be with just the regular black canvas. All right, I've got another 2 substrates to do, so let me get them real fast. Okay, so now that this is at least dry to the touch, now I do want to note that when we go into the nebula, I will have to let this dry more completely. But for the time being, just dry to the touch is good. It's a little cold underneath, but that's plenty of dryness that it needs, at least to do the stars. So, once again, slide that aside. I've mostly cleaned off my palette. Cleaned off the palette from the dark. And I got some fresh water. This is very, very, very important. If you're going into stars, especially doing this all at once, you want your water to be clean when you go into the white because you don't want your stars to be gray, usually. So for this, I specifically go for a sort of a medium-bodied acrylic, just because that's the white I use. Now I do, for certain circumstances, I will use a thinner, even a much thinner bodied acrylic than this. My acrylic wash is actually really, really nice, since I don't need to thin it as much as I do with this for the stars. But I would advise against using anything even thinner than that. So something like a golden high flow, which is a very ink-like paint, that's actually too thin and can cause more problems than it solves. It is possible to use it. You may find that you can kind of fudge things a little bit with that, but my issue with using the much thinner paint is that the thinner paint, if it's on, depending on the surface, the colors can kind of spread out and bloom. You don't want that. You want those stars to really just stick and stay in place. So, that said, I'm going to go ahead and scoop out a bit of this paint. And actually, I'm going to zoom out. So mind the legs of my tripod here. But I absolutely need the space here, and you guys need to be able to see this from a distance. So, I know it's probably going to be a little awkward, but just bear with me. So I'm going to lay a little bit of that paint out. We don't need a lot. We're not going crazy with our stars here. And there's 2 methods that I teach when I do stars. If you've seen that earlier video on how to paint stars, 2 different ways, this is both of these ways. And this is the combination method that I like to use the most. So, first things first, actually I'm going to start with the brush. So, actually not this brush. Now, the intro video for this series, I said I use almost exclusively soft bristle brushes. This one you have to absolutely use a stiff bristled brush for. Now, I've seen people use toothbrushes for this, where they just flick it, but toothbrushes have a much wider surface area, and so I don't really recommend doing that. It certainly creates a nice random pattern of a splatter, but unfortunately it tends to get everywhere because of that bigger surface area. A standard traditional paintbrush is a lot more controlled. You don't necessarily have to use a real expensive brush as long as it's nice and stiff. So for this, I'm just going to start thinning this out. And I'm looking for something that is sort of ink-like, but not ink-like right out of the gate. I find that thinning out a thicker, heavier-bodied paint also makes the paint a little bit more transparent, which makes the stars a little bit more interesting and more natural-looking as well. So, soak up as much of that as you can on your brush. Now, for my nebula, I'm going to do a bit of a swirl, kind of going on an S-curve like this. But for this, so I want the stars to both be everywhere, but I also do want to concentrate some of them towards that center area. So, just a flick of the brush, start on one side, pull back, and just, don't go crazy, but, have some fun with it. I like this because it creates a lot of small stars. Gives you those nice distant ones. That's probably all I need to do with that. I know you guys can't see it very much from up there. I'm going to give the edges a little bit of a spritz. So this is probably the bad side of this. Now, see, now I got these angled stars, which I'll have to cover up later because I came in an angle like that, so it dripped this way, and now I got streaks. So don't necessarily hold it like that. You want to up and down, gives you the best results, because those drips are going to fly up and back down and land more naturally on your canvas. Okay. Get a little bit more of a higher concentration here. More of that star belt. Okay, I actually got a bigger drip in there that came down my finger, but that's actually a good thing. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit more now. Get us back to focus. There we are. So as you can see, there's really tiny, even stars there. Now for this, I'm dipping my hand in the water, getting a bit of paint rolling down a bit of water rolling down my fingers here, and then I'm going into that paint, kind of the same way, rubbing that out. If you don't want to get paint on hands, you can use a rubber glove or something, but looking for about the same level of mixing as before. I'm seeing there's like chunks of paint in this, so I'm pushing down with my fingers to rub those together and disperse them in that water. So I don't want chunks of paint, I just want the watery paint. So same deal, load your fingers up, let that kind of pull and drip on them. And then ever so carefully flick your fingers the same way you kind of flick the brush. This will give you larger stars. I do this very sparingly. A lot of times I'll end up, if you do this a little too much, you'll get more of a splat. So you kind of have to be careful, and practice makes perfect, of course. You can always flick a little off to the side first. But this gives you those bigger, closer ones. One fun thing to do is, rather than using all 4 of your fingers and flicking like that, just using one and you get more of a star line. I'll do one of them. A little line up. This does run the risk of getting those side splatters though. Get a couple of them. Yeah. About like that. Now I've got 2 other canvases, so let's throw some stars on those as well. This one will go ahead and start with the finger flick method. So we'll go reverse with it. Keeping my hand a little further back to get bigger ones. Before I get to the brush, I'm going to move that over and get the cardboard as well. I do want to note that if you're doing this, for the love of God, put this on a flat surface. Do not try to do this on an easel, because those nice star drips will turn into nice star streaks. So make sure you're doing this laying flat. Probably should have said that to the start, so I apologize if you guys were painting on an easel. It won't be as much of a problem if you're just using the brush, but if you're flicking with your fingers, yeah, you flick that, it's going to drip right down your canvas. Yeah, I'll get you a nice, pull one up on one finger and get that, there's that edge. More expressive, definitely get more of those line stars, but all depends on just how you want to do it. Okay, back with the brush. Stars are so much fun. And then flick a few in there, a little bit more water actually. There it goes. Boom. For the reference, this is going to be really hard on your brush, so use an older one if you can, or just use a cheaper one. One you're not really afraid to ruin. Again, same deal with this one. Don't be afraid to redip for a little water. And when I first started doing stars, I was sitting there trying to do them individually, and the human brain is interesting because it kind of forces you to find patterns, and you need stars to be more random. Be a little lighter with my stars on this one. Okay, we've got stars on 3 different pieces. Now, as I mentioned before, you absolutely have to let these dry for a bit of time. So don't go straight into your nebula at this point, because if you do, you're going to start smearing those stars around, which you really don't want to do. So for the next piece of this, I'm going to just go and wait. Going to give it, I would say, probably about a half hour to be sure these are really dry. And I will see you guys in just a few minutes. Okay, so as much as the stars are a bit of a fun thing to paint, now the real fun begins, because now we're going for the nebula. Okay, so for this, again, I'm going to slide this over so we can see both the palette and the canvas in frame. Another clean palette. For my brush, I grabbed my Winsor & Newton Cotman. This is actually a watercolor brush, but it's really, really good for a wide variety of painting techniques, so that's why I'm using that. Nice soft bristles and perfect for literally everything. Going to keep things simple here. We're going to use just 3 colors. I have my regular Studio Series white, which is the titanium white that I've been using with the stars. I've got some cad yellow medium, as well as that Prussian blue that we were using earlier for the night sky color, I just kind of call it. Additionally, I will be using some GAC 100. This is a fluid acrylic extender. Glazing liquid also works as well. This just happens to be a little bit thinner. Also, it's a little bit glossier. I don't think that really makes a difference, but it should actually help just thinning the paint. And for the glazing and dry brushing we're going to be doing for this, it's kind of essential. Now, I decided to go with a cool color palette with sort of the green to yellow sort of section for this, specifically because the original dry brushing part 2 tutorial, I used reds and oranges, and I wanted to switch things up and do things a little bit differently. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay this color out. Don't need the white's going to be very, very sparing, and very much towards the end. So I actually ended up flipping this canvas over vertically. From what it was originally, the star bout that we did earlier was down here. And I like the idea of putting the nebula lower and put the star bout up top. I think compositionally it's just going to work a little bit better. So to start things out, again, fresh water, again, and fresh palette. Let me get some GAC in here as well before I forget. And I'm going to start out just with the blue. Not touching anything else, just a little bit of blue. Bristles are a little damp, not a ton. And I'm just going to start building a general shape here. Don't want to go super tight with our shape, but the overarching area of where it will be covering a decent amount of the canvas. I'm just kind of tapping with the brush here. Still not dipping back for more paint or water here. Just use everything I can off the brush. Actually, that initial dip of water is probably all I'm going to do. I think I'll keep it low and then arc it up. And little bits of paint at a time. Nothing major here. Okay. Yeah, probably not going to dip in the water much at all here. Again, we're focusing more on dry brushing, so I want to really just work with the color on the brush and with what's on the canvas. Okay, I'm going to grab a little bit of that medium and slowly start adding some yellow into this. Just a little bit at a time. And as we work, we're going to push a little further in, a little further in, creating a much thinner line for that more brighter color as we go. And this takes some time to really start building up the color. But once you kind of are confident with where you want that line and where you want those shapes, and you can leave marks. You don't necessarily have to follow the path the whole time. But I do find that it makes it a little bit easier in terms of building a composition as you go. Now, occasionally I will put extra areas as well that aren't necessarily right where the nebula is, or that initial part. I'll even come up and put another tuft or a little other gaseous cloud somewhere else. Give it just a little bit of a segment. And again, layer by layer, a little bit at a time, just change that color. This one's gonna show up a little bit more now. And if you notice that you're getting a little too much paint on your canvas, you could always grab another brush. It's a nice soft round brush, and just kind of blend that out. Tap with that and go back and forth. Maybe a bigger piece up here of it. Just tap, 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 tap. That's all we're doing. And you can do more than tap. You can, swirl it and fluff it and whatever you want to do with those shapes, really. This is really just about getting those colors right. And of course, the slower you build up those layers, the more dynamic and interesting the piece will be. Keeping things relatively simple today. I'm going to go into that just straight yellow now. Still have a little bit of that blue in the back of my brush that's kind of toning this color down, but that should be enough to really kind of start bringing a bit more light into this. And again, we're working a little bit tighter and tighter and tighter with these shapes and colors as we go. And wipe some of that off my brush. Got a little too much on there. You don't necessarily have to keep following that path. That gives you an idea. You can absolutely come out to the edge and give it a little extra branch or something somewhere. But generally keeping it close to where your initial lines were is the idea here. Start swirling a little bit, just pushing it around in different directions. I'm not sure how natural it is to use a green for a nebula, but I think it does make things look a little more alien, which is fun. Okay, I'm going to do one more layer of this. I'm actually going to switch to using this bigger round brush here. And I'm going to go with the white and some yellow. And very little paint, just almost nothing here. And then I'm very lightly just going to kind of fluff and frost with it. So circular motions, but the application of the paint will be more of a pull than a push this time. Very lightly. And at this point, I'm actually letting more of the texture of the canvas to do the work for me. So I'm getting this breakup in my line here, but that's actually the texture of the canvas doing the work. I'm not really doing much more than just grazing my brush across the canvas. Because acrylics have been drying, or have been, right? Acrylics dry quickly. Everything we started with is pretty much already dry. That blue layer is dry. We've been mixing a little bit as we go with that color, but for the most part, this is all just back-to-back color and back-to-back working with this and everything else. Simple layering. I'm going to grab just a little hint of that medium with the white. Getting that back out. Like so. Now, a very, very fun thing to do, not really required, but I actually want to grab a little bit of black as well here. Just like the tiniest little bit. One thing you'll see a lot, especially if you look up actual nebula images, I actually highly recommend doing that. Take a look at something from Hubble or James Webb to give yourself an idea of certain shapes and ideas of colors and things like that. But there are oftentimes these little dark gaseous regions within the brighter colors. You'll get like I think about the Horsehead Nebula when I think about the dark regions. So it's a very distinct shape. It doesn't blend out with everything as much as the other swirly gases do, but it absolutely has an extra level of level of depth to the whole piece. So I'm actually going to put some darker shapes in here. Just a little bit of blue, a little bit of that black, and just throw in a thing or two like that. Just kind of swirling the brush around. Anything that you didn't like before, you can always, cover things up by putting these little dark regions in. Swirly, swirly. About like that. Now, one final thing that I do actually highly recommend is put some stars back in over top of this. Now, I'm not necessarily going to grab that stiff brush again, but I'm going to thin out the paint. White. Stick with this watercolor brush. It's soft bristles, but it'll work for what we need it to do. And that little bit of extra green in the back of my brush, totally fine as well. So real lightly, just put a few more back on top. Like so. And that's really all it takes to create stars and a simple basic space nebula. Now, actually, it's kind of funny. I flipped this around to do this. For the next part of this tutorial, I'm actually going to be flipping it around this way. But that will be for next time. So this is a whole playlist of these space-themed object tutorials. If you're watching the playlist, it'll queue right up for you. If you're finding this later, there will be a link to the entire space objects and other such in this series videos in the description box below. Be sure to check out more videos like this on the channel. And this has been Cinder Studios reminding you to keep on creating, and I will see you guys next time.